everybody, it's Cieti here. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. So this is the part 2 of my Obey Me fan art series. The previous video I did the 3 older brothers. This one I'm doing the 4 younger ones. As always, I apologize if there's any background noise from my cat or from vehicles outside, construction. So this video was a bit more difficult for me to get started just because my favorite characters are Lucy and Levi, and also Beel and Belphie, but to start out the video I had to do 4th brother and 5th brother, which when I'm referring to the 4th brother I'll probably use the Japanese pronunciation since his name is kind of a bit problematic. So starting with Satan, the jacket lines on his, or like there's 3 lines of color on his jacket on the left side for me, or his right side. And they're not perfectly straight. So at first I tried to freehand them, but that didn't work very well just because it's difficult to keep the line width even and keep the curve the same between the 3 lines. And so then I just did straight lines and then tried to transform them. That wasn't working well. What I ended up doing was using like the curve line tool, but then I just kept the line mostly straight as best I could and curved it slightly at the end and did that for the 3 lines, which made it a lot easier to get them more uniform. And then I just chopped off the ends with the eraser so that they all like lined up properly. At this point, I was not used to the coloring style yet, just because I'd gotten mostly used to it when I was working on Levi. By the time I got to Levi's character in the previous video, but then I took a break to do editing and to do school stuff. So by the time I got back to working on coloring and drawing again for this video, I wasn't used to using this style anymore, which I think shows a little bit with Satan's hair because he has more rows of highlighting and shading in his hair than the other characters do, which I don't think looks terrible, but when I was just doing my placing of the highlights and stuff, I wasn't used to it. It took me a little bit to figure out. It also was partly because of his hairstyle that the highlights and shading ended up the way that they did. And in the end, I think it looks fine, but his hair does have more of that detail than the other characters. I also, like, my pen pressure was, I don't remember if it was with Satan or which character it was, but when I was working on the base colors, my pen pressure was not working, and I didn't realize until I'd finished doing all the base colors, and I was like, oh, that's what's wrong. And then I had to, like, I just restarted Clip Studio, and then my pen pressure was working again, but I spent like 2 hours without my pen pressure working and not realizing it, which is why I was like having so much difficulty doing the base colors. So then with Asmo, I think probably doing the middle zipper on his jacket was really annoying. I tried using like a line brush with a special boxy pattern, but that didn't look right. And then I drew it out, and then when I zoomed out and then like zoomed in and out, the zipper was too big, so then I had to transform it, and then it got blurry and looked weird, so then I had to like redraw in details. The side zippers were a lot easier, which I think has to do with the fact that I didn't have to show them interlocking. It was just like one side of the zipper teeth, so I could just draw like a loop every 4 pixels or whatever it was. Doing Asmo's hair was a lot easier. In fact, I think his hair was the easiest out of everyone's, probably because at this point I was getting back into doing this style, and his hair was just one of the more simpler styles compared to the other characters. Lucy's was pretty easy as well, but since it was my first time doing the coloring, it was a bit more difficult. And then one thing that I did run into, or actually it wasn't that much of a problem for me, but I realized that I should have done things in a different order, is when it came to Asmo's pants. I did the base color, and then I put the white stitching in, and then I did shading. But doing shading, I could easily overlap the white stitching, and then I have to draw the white stitching in again. So what I should have done is done the shading first and then did the white stitching. In the end, it was fine because I just select the base color using the magic wand tool and then did the shading. But sometimes that can cause problems when your selection is too sharp and you color and it doesn't look right. When I was doing his scarf, I actually really enjoyed doing Asmo's scarf when I put the shading in, just because with all the folds in the scarf, there was quite a bit of shading that just made the depth a lot more apparent on, like, for Asmo's character, which the other characters do have folds in their clothes, but it just wasn't as obvious as having the scarf, which has so many folds in it that you have a lot of shading, and then highlights and things that really make the depth apparent. So I really just liked how that looked. So for the next video, my next video, which is going to be the sound story, I don't know if I'm going to keep doing this coloring style that I've been trying out with the Obey Me fan arts. I do like this style somewhat. I don't think it's necessarily my favorite thing. I do like how it looks though, but because the sound story is a continuation of a video I did a couple years ago, there's already an art style that I was using for that. Now, I don't really know if I like the art style that I was using for that either, but I think that this new art style I've been trying with the Obey Me brothers is a bit too different from that one. So I'll probably go somewhat towards my style that I was doing previously before the Obey Me videos and use that for my next video, just so that it's not too drastic of a change between the two, since it is part of a comic and I want the art style to stay somewhat similar for the characters. But back to this video. So doing Beel. Beel has, I think, more detail in his outfit than any of the other characters. Levi does have quite a bit of detail in his design, but some of that, like the buttons on his jacket, I didn't end up doing because of the pose. His arm was covering them. Where with Beel's pose, I pretty much used the one that you like see with this character all the time. Which means that a lot of the detail is visible, like the triangles on his shirt and his necklace and his bracelet and his belts. And then his shoes are even more detailed. Like all the other characters have fairly simple shoes, but Beel has like all the different colors and the green shoelaces and stuff because they're tennis shoes. So detail wise, his took a lot more time just trying to get all those details correct, especially the details on the triangles on the shirt, because the triangles I did with the line art, the line art was vector, so I had to like select out the triangles, copy them, rasterize them, and then use the airbrush to get the white and orange. And I didn't match it up perfectly to how this shirt actually looks, but I just did it so that it was close enough. And then the one thing that I didn't realize until I was doing this artwork is that Belphie and Beel have the same color eyes, which I feel like I had realized or like heard of before, but I didn't really internalize it. But it kind of makes sense since they're twins. So when I was working on Beel's eyes, I had a little bit of trouble just with the color and trying to get color dodge to look right and stuff. And I realized that I'd worked on one eye completely and hadn't been working on the other eye at the same time. So instead of redoing the other eye and trying to get it to match, I just copy pasted, flipped horizontally, and did a little bit of transforming to put the color in for the other eye. And then when I came to Belphie, I just copied Beel's eyes over and moved him over to Belphie's character. And then there was quite a bit more transforming that had to be done to make the color fit for Belphie's eyes. But in the end, I think that Belphie's eyes actually ended up looking a bit better than Beel's. I feel like Beel's the pupils are slightly off, so he looks slightly derpy if you pay close attention to it. That might also have to do with the fact that he's drooling because he's thinking about hamburgers, but anyways, so talking about Belphie, the one thing that I haven't addressed previously, I don't think, is the opacity for the hair. So Belphie's hairstyle is the most obvious where his hair goes and completely covers the eye, but I still wanted to be able to see the eye underneath. So I had that in mind when I was doing the liner of Belphie and specifically put the eyeliner on a separate layer. And then what I've done previously with the other characters is I would use an eraser that wasn't at full opacity and then erase some of the hair coloring so that the hair was slightly transparent and you could see the eye underneath. Or like for Beel's, I think instead of doing it like that, I made a separate layer and drew some of the hair coloring on that separate layer and then just made the whole layer have less opacity so you could see to the eye beneath. But for Belphie's, just doing that, it didn't look quite right. Instead, what I ended up doing was taking the liner, taking the color for that eye, and moving it on top of the hair, and then lowering the opacity. And then I also used the eraser that wasn't at full opacity to make the hair slightly transparent. Which is interesting. So when you look at the artwork, now it looks like his eye is underneath the hair, because that's logically how you would, that's just how you would think of it. Like, obviously, someone's eye isn't going to be in front of their hair. But like looking at the layers, the eyes are actually on top, or the eye is actually on top of the hair, which is just something that I found interesting. That's pretty much all I have, like, technically to talk about for the video. This is really fun just doing a fan art. I mean, I used to do fan arts all the time, but I've never like made a whole video and posted them, and I usually never actually got to coloring my fan arts. I would just sketch them, or I would start coloring them and only color the skins. Like, I flip through my old fan arts and like they all have their skin colored but nothing else. So this is the first time that I think I've ever like fully finished a fan art project, and it was really fun to do with these characters. I really like their designs. And trying out the new coloring style was really fun. I ended up really liking how they turned out in the end. And then one thing I guess to note is when I was actually doing all of the sketching and the lining and the coloring, all of the characters were on one canvas, as you probably saw while I was going through the video. But if you noticed in the previous video, at the end, they all were on their own, like, they were all treated as separate artworks when I showed the finished products at the end. Which, what I did is I did all of them on one canvas, but then since that one canvas wasn't finished yet, I couldn't show that in the previous video because not all the characters were done. So I also gave them their own, I copied all the brothers over to their own canvases, like new canvases, and gave them their own backgrounds themed with their characters. So for, like, you'll see at the end of the video, for Satan, I think I have like cats and paw prints in the background, and he's thinking about a kitten. And then for Asmo, I think I just put like stars in the background because I felt like that fit his character. And then Beel has a bunch of like hamburgers and fries in the background, and he's thinking about hamburgers. And then for Belphie, I also put stars in the background since he likes like star showers and looking up at, constellations and stuff. And then he's thinking about a bed in his thought bubble. And I did similar things for the other characters, the older brothers in the previous video, which was fun to try and come up with backgrounds that fit all of their characters. And then also, like, for the background, I did gradients in all the colors, or I did gradients for all the characters, and I actually used their eye colors as the basis for the gradient that I was doing. At first, I was going to try and use, there's an official image that goes with the game that has all the characters, like, with their numbers, and then like their colors behind them. And I tried using those at first, but I didn't really like how that looked, so I ended up using the gradients with their eye colors, which I like how that turned out. And then when it came to finishing up the final artwork with all of the brothers that are on one canvas, I did use the colors from the one image. There's an image, you guys probably know it, but they're all in their demon forms. And each of the characters are all lined up, and then they have their number behind them. And like behind Lucy, they used blue, and then behind Mammon, yellow, and so on and so forth. So I used those colors for my main canvas piece, and then messed around with the background a bit for that to get something that I liked. It was a bit difficult it took a while to get a background that I liked, but in the end, it was kind of silly, but I like how it turned out. So I'll show that at the end of the video. And the other thing I enjoyed was doing the poses for all the characters. A lot of the poses, like Mammon's pose is the same because I just couldn't think of a unique pose for him, I guess. And then Lucy's pose is also pretty much the same as his. So is Beel's, although to change things, like I made Beel instead of just like his neutral face that he has. I made him have a drooling face because he's thinking about hamburgers, which I think fits his character really well. But like Asmo's pose, and then having Satan like reading the book, and then Belphie like hugging his pillow. And then Levi's pose was definitely my favorite. He's the first one that I sketched out, but I really like his pose and like the cute little face that he's making. So doing that was really fun, trying to think of things that fit their characters, just because, well, you approach it a bit differently. Like when you're doing your own characters that you're making up, like you're making up their personality kind of along the way as you're going. But these are all characters that lots of people know because lots of people play the game. So their characters are already established. So you kind of have to analyze those characters that already exist, that people already like recognize, and figure out how you're going to portray that character. So that was really fun to plan out and do. And I think that's all I have to say for this video, so I will let you guys go ahead and continue watching the rest. Okay, so here's the finished pieces. As I said before, there's the individual ones, and then at the end I show the canvas with all of the brothers. This is a really fun video to do. If you liked it, please consider subscribing and liking, and I hope you all have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!